welcome everybody to our remote session. This is Tom Bechtold from Secure World Digital. Today, we are back at the Convergence series. This is actually chapter 14, season 5. If you've been with us the whole time, you are very, very knowledgeable about AI, I'm going to tell you. But thank you to the folks over at Abnormal AI for partnering with me here at Secure World to bring this series to life. We've been having a lot of fun with this. A lot of cool presenters and speakers, lots of very relevant and timely topics. I got to say, this has been a fun series to be part of. So thank you all for joining us today. Thanks again for the folks over at Abnormal AI. In case you missed it, back on September 24th, we had chapter 13. That was the adversary's new assistant weaponizing AI chatbots. Great conversation there. If you missed that session, I've got a link in the resource tab, so don't sweat it. We'll make sure you can get to that. But please check that out when you have a chance, because there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that you've missed that's really solid educational content. Don't want to miss, especially as it comes out to with agentic stuff in the chat box. So today, of course, we're talking about bridging the SOC talent gap with automation, things people are trying to get their arms around right now. And then we're going to wrap things up with our Season 5 with Chapter 15 on October 22nd. That's Supercharged Deception, how AI is accelerating social engineering. So we're going to be back in a couple of weeks for that one. So make sure that's on your calendar. But if you did sign up for today's, I automatically roll you into that one. So if you do see an email, that's why. So you should be all set for 15. Okay, so that being said, if you are new to the program, real quickly, housekeeping stuff. We've got today's slides. Just kind of placeholder stuff because we're having a chat here, right? So this is really a conversation, but we do have the slides in there. I know some certifying bodies want you to download the slide deck so you have proof of attendance. We do send you a proof of attendance after about an hour, and you can actually download that after about 45 minutes on this platform. We'll take your questions. I have the feeling that we're going to run out of time for questions today, but if you do send in questions, I will ship those off to the team. We'll do some answers if we can. So if you do have any audio or video issues, please try to refresh your screen, F5 or function F5. That should fix any problems that you might have. I will tell you also for the presenters out there that are on the line, if you are running into some problems, it seems like you're lagging or whatever, refresh as soon as you can. It'll take you out of the feed, but you'll bring you back. So. Okay, like I said, we're recording this thing. This is going to be available to share and rewatch with the link you used today. If you know anyone that is struggling with their SOC environment, please share this video with them. They're probably going to want to know some of this information, and they might even thank you for it. Plus, they get a CPE credit out of it, too. So that being said, who are we talking to? You guys didn't tune in for me because I'm doing a whole lot of talking right now. But welcome to our presenters. We have Patricia Titus. She is the field CISO over at Abnormal AI, joined with Dwayne Smith. He is the SVP of Security and CISO at Vensure Employer Solutions. And Marcos Marrero, he is the CISO at H.I.G Capital. Great, well-rounded panel here we have. I'm going to turn things over to Patty. She's actually going to take my job today, and I get to join you guys out in the audience and enjoy this session. So, Patty, come on down, as they used to say on that one popular game show. The floor is yours, and for the guys.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Tom, for a great introduction. So I'm going to ask each one of the panelists if they would just give a little more detail about who they are so that we've got a little bit more information, a little bit of background about where you've come from, and a little bit of current information about your current company would be super helpful. So you already know I'm Patricia Titus. Patty, please. Field CISO at Abnormal. I have been with Abnormal since April, and prior to that, I was a CISO of Fortune 500 and public sector companies and organizations for about 25 years. So I might now call myself a bit of a recovering CISO. And so, Marcos, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Patty. Marcos Marrero, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for H.I.G Capital, global private equity firm with headquarters here in South Florida. And I'm going to date myself on this one, but I've now been in this industry for 25 years. Very cool because I've seen it grow up together with me. So we both grew up at the same time in the space. nowadays at H.I.G Capital, I am responsible for the global cybersecurity program. So everything that is security operations, cyber GRC, also business resiliency, which encompasses both BC and DR, crisis communications, executive protection, et cetera.
Wow, that's a lot. You got a lot on your plate.
Yeah,
all right.
I wish I could clone myself.
That'd be awesome. Dwayne.
Thanks, Patty. Dwayne Smith, the Global CISO for Vensure Employer Solutions. Vensure Employer Solutions is headquartered out of Chandler, Arizona, and with a regional headquarters in Duluth, Georgia. We're one of the largest payroll and benefits companies you've never heard of. So, but hopefully you'll hear of us more sooner. But we have our own tech, so very similar to Marcos. I'm responsible for all those other areas, but I also have AppSec. So we have a large number of platforms and applications. So we develop a lot of those in-house. So my job's just slightly different in that regards. But my background, I came out of the government space and worked for a few other small companies like AT&T, Northrop Grumman, and Cummins. So.
Yeah, those little tiny companies. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, you know what? I'm not going to spend too much time on introducing our topic. Tom did a great job of that. I think we're just going to jump right in. So one of the areas we want to talk about is that SOC talent gap and why it persists. I know, having run security operations teams for a long, long time, I would say that it's always a challenge to find the right type of people. But I also think retaining them. So the glorious thing about being in cybersecurity is there's a shortage of staff in general, and retention's a problem that we have to deal with. So Dwayne, I'm going to start you off here first. When we talked early on about doing this, we talked about that persistent challenge that we've had for many years in the staffing. We are also suffering from a lot of burnout that's happening too. So from your perspective, what's driving the gap? Why is this such a challenge for us?
Yeah, well, for the first reason, I think, I started off my career as an analyst, so I understand what it's like and how to come in. And I always love people that start as analysts, but with AI and some of the other automation and the education and the different training paradigms, there's a missing piece of that experience. So while there's a talent gap, there are plenty of people that are trained, and there are plenty of people who know how to do tools, which I actually call tool jockeys sometimes. We're missing that key piece of experience. And how do you get them there, and how do you train them, and how do we, as CISOs and operators and others, get them there for us without, blowing the bank and then retain them, as you were talking about. But I worry about that in the regards of these are your frontline defenders. And if you've got a person that's learning, it's really hard to take a chance on some of them sometimes. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've seen these shortages that we've had in previous companies definitely have a major impact on the day-to-day SOC operations. So, I mean, Marcos, what's your thought on this, and especially on, that well-being of the security teams, and they are the front line, and they're seen often by a lot of the executives because they're responding to phone calls that might come in, or having to deal with challenges. So, tell me a little bit about your take on this talent gap.
So I agree with Dwayne's statement. It's the tool jockeys, which they know the tools, they understand the tools, they have some theoretical experience with the tools and just the concepts, right? When they're fresh out of school, or maybe into their first corporate job or whatnot. But the experience, to his point, is really kind of one of the fundamental areas that turns you into what I would call a well-rounded, not highly experienced, but well-rounded security professional at that point. There's no shortcut for the experience. It's you just have to go through the motions, and it's something that comes with time. Some people can acquire that much faster than others. And those individuals that I've come across in my career, that I've hired and I've managed, and have been fortunate enough to actually retain within organizations that I've worked for or and whatnot. It's the ones that have a passion, Patty. That's really the differentiating factor. I don't care how many certifications you have. That just tells me you can pass a test and you can learn some material. It's the passion, even if you lack the experience. I will hire someone with that demonstrates that passion to me, because I know they're going to go above and beyond and go the extra mile to acquire that experience, which then brings them into that frontline defense position, and they're ready to actually fill that role, right? And you don't have to worry as a CISO, right, or your head of security operations. In that point of view, doesn't have to worry about them responding. They know they're going to do what they need to do, right, and whatnot. So, but yeah, the experience piece. I mean, and again, I don't think there's any shortcuts, and happy to hear thoughts maybe.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Marcos. There was a conversation that a couple of CISOs were having, and the discussion came up about, is cybersecurity operations, is it a first job? Like, can you bring in an intern and it's a first job? And there are a lot of people who said, SOC operations is not a first job. Like, you need some acumen, some technical acumen for that. I actually disagreed with them, because I've brought in interns. I've hired kids directly out of college. I've brought in someone who had a marketing background. So I love what you highlighted, Marcos, because it is passion, and they got to be like sponges, just absorbing everything that's coming in. And I think those fresh ideas actually makes them challenge the status quo of the SOC analysts who've been there for a long time and are churning through the stuff. And they challenge the process, and encouraging them to challenge that. Dwayne, did you have a point you wanted to make there?
Yeah, I was about ready to jump through the screen there when you were talking about that, about people say it's not the entry level. I beg to differ. I heard Marcos talking about the passion. The passion to me is like when I first started out, that front line, it's exactly where they should start. Because if they understand what they're looking at, they can then develop their critical thinking about what they're seeing. That helps them become more capable of making the decisions later on. My team actually gets tired of hearing me talk about how we see our enterprise as a living body, and they're the ones taking the blood pressure, the breathing, all the different vitals, because they see the network when it wakes up in the morning. They see it when it goes to bed at night. They see the activity drop. They are going to be your first person to see something that's abnormal and changes, and they need to be able to understand why.
Right.
So talk about passion. Sorry, Marcos, maybe I'm showing a little bit there, my old analyst days, but I absolutely think operations and analysis is where you need to start. So you can actually, especially if you're going to be somewhere for a while, to understand the business at the end of the day.
That's great. Go ahead, Marcos.
Sorry, Patty. No, Dwayne, yes, listen, 100% agree with you. However, in an ideal world, starting off on the service desk, starting off in, operations, infrastructure, maybe development, software engineering or whatnot, it's important because you gain an understanding of what you're protecting. You can't protect what you don't understand, and how those things talk to each other and how they fit into the bigger picture. And I love your example of the body, right? How those different body parts talk to each other and how they interact with each other. In security operations, context is key. Mm-hmm. What flashes up on the screen as a bad thing may not necessarily be a bad thing. It depends on the contextual aspect of it behind the scenes. And that is what I feel, at least my opinion, that you gain from an operational experience aspect of it. I started my career on the service desk. That's where I started. I was setting up PCs, I was creating accounts, I was doing break fix, and I always had an interest in security. And that's what naturally led me into the security space. But I came in with the IT infrastructure and IT operations background and understanding at that point. However, it can't always be the case where you have someone with experience, right? So then that's when I flip over to the passion side of it, because that passion, if I do a good job as a manager, or if my direct reports do a good managerial work with those individuals and really foster the professional growth, they're going to light the embers under that passion to go learn the other areas of technology, right? So that you have a much better kind of full picture around it.
And that's an excellent point. I get a lot of people asking me, how do I get to be a CISO? First of all, I always ask, why do you want to be a CISO? So that's the first question. But I'd also say that the path to get to where, to different roles in an organization are not the same. It's changed so drastically over the last 25 years, or, so I think it's different. I want to push us along to the next discussion point. And I think it dovetails really nicely into this discussion. And that is the role of automation and how we drive down, we want to drive results. We want to catch things that are coming in, but we also want to eliminate, I call it low value work, which is the wrong term. And so I love our marketing people came up with reducing repetition. And so, we have this volume of repetitive work that we do in most jobs within cyber, right? So audit findings come out, we have to triage them. We have processes that help us go through those checklists, so to speak, to make sure that we are not missing something. But when we have a high volume of tasks and repetitive work to do, what do we see what do we think are the most likely candidates for automation in our SOC operations today? And some would say SOAR was supposed to help us get there, but I always felt a little sore because my SOAR never worked. So I'm going to ask you all, what do you think? What do you think we can automate? How do we get there?
So I'll start with aggregation always, like common alerts that come in, and and being able to measure those. That was always one of my things. Common tickets are common things that come into the ticket queue outside of the alerts, like tasks. To your point on SOAR is a sore subject for me as well, because I almost had somebody, not here, but at another organization, shut the whole manufacturing component down by accident. So back to the tool jockeys, that in context that you were talking about, Marcos, 100% agree with some of the things you said there. But, I also think that automation, and you kind of touched on it, is really important so that people aren't always just doing the mundane tasks. That's also comes to your retention of people. They want to do things that they think are meaningful as well, Patty. But I'll say with a lot of the common alerts, a lot of the common tasks, and actually, if you really look at it, we're actually working around trying to automate the simulation of our tabletops as well. So that's a big focus for us. So
awesome, Marcos.
Yeah, I agree with Dwayne. The common stuff that comes into security operations. But I do challenge my team to identify those things that come into the SOC that they have to action. Challenge them to ensure that if it fits into the bucket of low value and low risk, by all means go and automate it. And realistically, while you're even trying to automate it, we've had this happen here at H.I.G. When they're going down the route of trying to automate that low value and low risk ticket, action, alert, whatever it may be, there's been a good amount of times, a decent amount of times, where they found really there's no need for this alert. Why do we still even have this rule? Why is this still even firing? Why is this ticket even still coming in? And it's clean up before we automate. And
yeah, I like that.
that's one of the mantras that I constantly working on instilling in them, and to always keep that at the forefront. Just because we're doing something today doesn't mean that it still makes sense. There was a reason why we did it in the past, but that doesn't mean we still need to do it today.
Yeah, so I like that. That's the risk of automation for the sake of automation, but it sounds like you're also challenging them to look at your processes and your playbooks and define areas where you maybe have complexity that can be removed. So how do you measure? I mean, this is always, like we get measured by the board of directors on a quarterly basis. And I always feel like I need to have some sort of measurement of success or the return on investment of the automation. So we're, especially now in this, it's not new, but in this newer time where we're using AI to do some of that automation. A lot of companies are looking at, we want to collect the data points on where automation is adding value. And so, one company had a program called Big Bets, another organization called Value Reduction. So your value risk reduction. And we captured hours, actually, man hours of how automation helped us. So give me some idea of how you're seeing the biggest gains and how you're measuring that automation. And Marcos, I'm going to start with you this time.
So one of the things that I have my GRC and security operations team do before they want to automate something is measure the amount of time it takes now, on average. It's not always going to be the same measurement, or it's not always going to be the same time period, but find the average of what it takes to accomplish that task, address that alert, incident, remediate it, whatever it may be, and then visualize what it will look like once you do automate and once you remove the complexity around that particular process, right, or that action, or Patty, to your point, the from a playbook point of view, right, and running through those steps. And if it reaches a certain level, and we don't have, it's not something that's hard coded or defined as to it has to fit or has to reach this certain level, whatever that level may be, of, let's say, time savings. That's the only time we'll execute on it. No, because it's a accumulation of small wins that has a bigger impact. So if they're saving 13 minutes across 100 different processes, add that up, and that shows you the amount of time on average, right, that they'll be saving, which then obviously they can dedicate and invest in other areas, and not necessarily even from a work point of view, because I found that's always sort of the natural inclination. Whoa, I can do these other things now from a work point of view that maybe are on my to-do list I haven't been able to get to or whatnot. I challenge them and I say, no. Invest it in yourself. I want you to go to training. I want you to educate yourself on newer topics or areas you want to improve on. It's not all about doing more work. At the end of the day, the work won't get done if you're not here. I need to make sure that you as a human and as a professional are in a good place.
Awesome. Dwayne?
That's a hard act to follow is what I'm going to say, because we actually also measure the capacity and productivity throughput as well. So, if you go into that board meeting, right, they don't want statistics, they want metrics, right? So around mean time to mitigate, mean time to detect, mean time to respond, all those things. So on our journey, we really look at those really heavily. I also agree in the training, but for us, it's a little more of cross-training. So we do want them to learn those things, but we want them to learn in the different verticals. And the reason we do that, that's actually part of our succession planning, so they have time to go do that. And since we do a lot of development, lots of people can gather themselves around the traditional cybersecurity verticals is what I would say, but AppSec is a growing area is what I'm going to say, as DevOps has definitely accelerating, and there's a number. It seems like I don't know how many new apps there are a day now. I remember there used to be like a new app a day. Now it's multiple apps a day. Now I think it's thousands of apps a day. And AI is actually compounding that problem for us, right? There's more apps that come in, more things. So people want to learn and train in those areas. And that's where we really focus that training from. And not only to learn DevSecOps, but learn security DevOps, because we like to develop some of our own security stuff too. So
that's awesome. Great. All right. We're gonna continue on our conversation here and talking more about empowering lean teams. So I'm sure you guys have hundreds of people in your security operations center, right?
Wish.
Thousands. Right?
Yeah, so here we are, very lean teams. And again, some of it is propagated through the initial discussion of building your SOC and building your SOC team and retaining talent. And I love what you both have said up to this point about, how you're thinking about this automation is going to make it easier for your team to go get, invest in themselves. I like that. And to learn new things. So when we think about achieving more with fewer resources, again, not all of us have hundreds of people working on our security operations teams. How do we strike that balance between automation and human expertise that we need? It's critical in incident response. So if we, I heard a company say, we can automate your entire SOC. And I'm like, no. I would be so uncomfortable with that, because I still want that human in and on the loop. I do not want to fully automate. Maybe it will happen one day. I don't know that it will happen in my professional career as a CISO. So how do we balance the automation and that need for human? And Marcos, you brought up the low risk, low value. What other ways are there to strike that balance?
I think I see it from 2 points that all three have sort of touched on over the last few minutes, which is automate that low-hanging fruit, right? To your point that you just brought up, Patty, right? That low value, low risk, right? Tasks or processes. Those you can, if you're comfortable with doing that as an organization in a security operations function, and it fits within your culture and your risk appetite, automate those fully, end to end. No human involved until you view the final result, just to make sure. Then you have the flip side, in where you can take a process with 7 steps, but there's 4 of those steps that a human absolutely has to be involved. Because to your point, Patty, you can't have a piece of technology understand the human contextual aspect of something that is going to really inform how you address that something, right? That something being an alert fired from your tech stack, right? Suspicious activity that you need to investigate, et cetera. But there's certain steps there that you can automate that can free up some of the time for those resources of yours, right? And that continues to empower you as a lean team to not drown with all the work and everything that you get, that you need to look at as a security operations function, and allows you to have a little bit of a breathing room, right? And it also empowers your employees, and from a mental health perspective too. They're not looking at things, or they're not looking at the mundane grunt work all the time, and they're not actioning that mundane and that grunt work all the time. So they're able to expose themselves, right, to other areas, upskill themselves maybe or whatnot. Dwayne, I loved your point on the cross training, right, across different functions. That's something that we're experimenting with now between GRC and security operations. And so far it's very early, but it's yielded some good results. So I think those are the 2 sides of the coin, Patty, that I see from that point of view, that can help empower lean teams.
Yeah, I love those points. But But let me push on this a little bit. When you're introducing AI or you want to start adopting automation and you're having this conversation with your SOC analysts, how do you have the conversation and remove the threat of AI? And I think you touched on it a little bit, both of you did. But how do you remove the threat that AI is going to take my job? Because I think that, again, I think we all agree full SOC automation for at least a Fortune 500 highly regulated industry is not going to happen anytime soon. But how do you get your analysts comfortable with implementing AI and automation?
So I'll take it and say this. So we're in a race. Good technology can be used for good. Good technology can be used for bad. So I tell my analysts all the time that it's technology is meant to be helpful, but there are those people that want to continue to use it. I'll talk nation state in this perspective. So I need those people to be there to, once again, look at those deviations, look at those variations, re-examine, quality check the AI, quality check the automation, make sure that we're not missing anything. I always love to pick on Microsoft a little bit. The recent direct send was a good example of that vulnerability that was out there. They're like, trust me, it's all on the Microsoft network. It's safe, it's secure. I mean, it ended up being a vulnerability. So, back to that automation, I'll stay away from zero trust in regards to that. But that became an important part for us, and some of the automation we have to detect and identify and maybe even release something based on trust versus what was really happening.
Right. It's a great point. Marcos?
I've recently started using a term that so far, based on the feedback and the reactions that I see, is resonating well. And if I'm talking to someone in security operations or even within the security engineering group, which is embedded within our SOC, around AI and the sky is falling, AI is going to take your job, right? First thing I tell them is AI is not going to take your job. AI is going to replace jobs because of people that don't know how to use AI. Those are the jobs it's going to take. It's not going to fully take your job. Well, why is that, Marcos? Well, because what does AI stand for? It's artificial intelligence. You have natural intelligence. Until AI gets there, and hopefully none of us are alive by the time that happens, because it's going to be very scary, Terminator, scene out of Terminator, movie sort of scenario. It's nothing to worry about.
Awesome. So is automation and AI that you're implementing, is it changing your hiring practices? So are you looking for a different, I had this conversation with someone as well. Okay, so we can automate most of our tier 1 SOC analysts, and I actually did that in a previous company where we actually automated so much of the tier 1 that my tier 1 analysts got trained to be threat hunters and moved up to tier 2, and which was great. I mean, we still needed somebody periodically to go back at the tier 1 level, but it gave me an opportunity to rethink my hiring practices. But if I don't have tier 1 analysts, does that create a pipeline problem for your tier 2, tier 3, or other opportunities within your organization? So is this potentially going to change how we hire and even change career path conversations? What are your thoughts? Either one of you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll start that one off. I completely agree with you. And I equate it to almost sort of the analogy of there are trades and careers in where you have to go through a multi-year apprenticeship before you can say that you are XYZ. That's sort of kind of what the tier 1 is within our security operations. That's where you cut your teeth. That's where you learn, right, all the ins and outs. That's how you build yourself up, right, as a professional before you move into level 2 threat hunting, maybe security engineering or other disciplines. To your point, Pat, if we eliminate that because it's automated, where are those people going to train? Because they're not being trained in academia, right? Other than grabbing them from another organization.
Yeah,
that's going to reduce your pipeline, right? To your point. So I don't think there's a right answer for that yet. I think it's kind of still up in the air, really.
Well, we're going to come back to that maybe and have a follow-on webinar, because I really have some ideas around the partnership that needs to be fostered between AI and employees. And there's an opportunity with using AI as a companion to a tier 1 analyst that's only going to be in that role for a shorter period of time, where the AI is actually the mentor. So I think there are some things that may be coming out, or we may see some changes that may actually create a partnership. Dwayne, what do you think?
As you were talking about that, Patty, one of the things that we're looking into, we haven't went there yet, is the concept of AI-enabled adversarial networks, right? To actually train other people.
Yeah.
So that's a pen testing paradigm, but what greater way to, become aware and grow as AI grows with you in training to help get you there. So by the way, Marcos, I love the apprenticeship model. Me and you should have a side conversation about that. I had to go through an apprenticeship training program in the Navy, but we, that used to be the old sign off, do the book, OJT, Patty. I don't know if you remember that, I had to sign it. But to your point, I think it's fluid. I think it's going to change, and there's going to be a lot of different things that come out of it with different ways to get people there. And I hope as a community, the cybersecurity community can actually come together and find a way to do that, and and develop a standard, not a framework for it, not let industry do it, but the community do it as itself. So
that's a great topic. And I think there's some people who might be listening that actually are starting to think about that from the cybersecurity professional acumen and what it takes to get to certain levels. But I don't think we've talked about those different, like apprenticeship and journeyman and those kinds of steps in our own career path framework. And it might be something we need to come together as a group to talk about. So
I'll make one more comment if you don't mind. I mean, I don't know how old Marcus is, but I'm getting pretty long in the tooth. I feel like, I've been fortunate in my career over 25 plus years that I think a lot of CISOs out there need to start figuring out how to pay back. I actually challenge them, because the next generation, when we retire, I actually think, over the next 5 to 6 years while I'm still working, I need to find ways to actually bring that next generation in so I can feel safe and enjoy my retirement one day, I hope. But everybody wants to have some safety and, and peace and freedom. But there's my military side coming out, Patty. But I would challenge every CISO to start thinking about that at some point.
I do. I love that. But I also think I had a conversation with somebody not long ago about, the fact that some of us are aging out. And, I like to tell people, it was the first federal CISO. So if the CISO career path is messed up, it's probably something I did in the beginning, because I think probably all three of us were probably pioneers in this space. And, our stories are not on the internet. Our stories of the School of Hard Knocks back from early 2000s, late 90s, those are not captured anywhere. And so they're not AI available. And we have got to start telling these stories, which is why the three of us are here, to share our stories so that it can become AI enabled and it can be part of that institutional knowledge for the next generations. So I'm going to take us to our last point here, and that is, near-term changes and lasting lessons. So what do we foresee AI and automation reshaping in our security operations centers, and how do we see that happening over the next, I even think 1 to 3 years is a long time, but how do we see that changing over the next 12, 24, 36 months? It sounds shorter when you say that than you do years. What are you thinking is going to happen there?
I wish I had a crystal ball is all I could say, and the right place to invest the dollars. But anyway, I mean, seriously, I kind of see us, and I think you and I've talked about this, Patty, the hype cycle right now with AI too. I think we're already seeing some AI fatigue. So over the next 24 to 36 months, that's forever in a digital world. So I don't know what's going to come out next, but we already see it. Our vendors are already wanting to use us as their LLMs, right? So, hey, let me turn AI on in your tools. Let me do this. Let me do that. So, I mean, so the people who have the footing are looking for ways to continue to develop and bring other things forward. I don't know what it's going to hold, but I do know we're going to have to be ready for it. So.
Yeah, I agree. I wish I had a crystal ball. If I were smart enough, I might have predicted this was coming way back when, but we were just dealing with script kiddies back in the day. And today now it's so much more complicated because they're using the good and the bad AI. We're using it for good, and it's being used against us for bad. Marcos, any thoughts on that? 1 to 3 years, or 12 to 24, 36 months?
So from a near-term point of view, I'm hoping to see a lot of the grunt work being automated, the tedious tasks, right? The alleviating the SOC personnel from having to deal with those type of things. To Dwayne's point, and I agree with him, like many other hype cycles, we're reaching that inflection point, and there's going to be a lot of that hype that I feel is going to be either absorbed or it's just going to fall away and not exist anymore. And what is left standing is what is viable from a long-term point of view, right? When you look at the AI and ML space. To your point, Patty, and Dwayne fits in this camp also too. This field it's very new. This discipline has not been around very long. When I started in this field, we called it information assurance, and we borrowed that term from military and government, right? And I can see, yeah, we were both shaking heads because, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Information security didn't exist as a term, let alone even cybersecurity.
Yeah.
So that's I feel sometimes we lose sight of that, not on purpose, but just because we're in the thick of it day in and day out. But if we take a macro level look and we see that this is really only a discipline that, if you want to count or taking into consideration, government, military also, what, 3 decades, 4 tops? Let's say 4, about on average, about 4 decades. That's not very long when you look at other industries and other disciplines. That is still very much you're in your mid-teens, right? Or your late awkward teenage years, right? When you're kind of defining who you are and whatnot. So we still have a lot of growing up to do as an industry from that perspective. And the next generation coming after us that is going to take our place, and they're going to carry that mantle forward. The unfortunate part is that they're not going to do it with the same technology that we are dealing with, have dealt with in the past, are dealing with now, and will deal with in the near future. They're going to be dealing with different technologies that we may not even understand. And let's be frank, we may get to an age where we don't even care and we don't want to understand it at that point. So who knows? It's going to be a whole different set of skills that they're going to have to learn or know or whatnot. So I think that kind of brings it back around to the crystal ball piece, right? Kind of really don't know, right, where that's going to go. But we have to pay it forward at the end of the day, right? Because the basic concepts still apply. And the future leaders are going to need that as they deal with the just constant norm of rapidly evolving technology.
Yeah, I agree. So we're going to wrap this up with my very favorite part, and that is that piece of advice that you wish someone would have given you as you started this whole automation journey. Like, what would you tell yourself in the beginning of this automation journey that you know now, but you didn't know then? And I'm going to kick this one off. And that was, make sure that when you're going through the automation, that you are very clearly defining for your leadership. This is not job. We're not eliminating jobs here. This is going to allow my people to have more valuable and tangible work versus being ticket takers and answering the phone every time you call. And I'm notorious for this. Is this phishing? Is this a scam? Is this a real invoice? Can you blow this up in the sandbox for me? So, as guilty as everybody else, I don't want my people to have to be ticket takers and answering that phone. I want all that piece to be automated and keep my people focused on tangible, valuable work. So when they go home at night, they can say, I did a good job today, not I closed 10 tickets from a phishing campaign. So that I would like to have told myself that, be very clear with leadership. This is not job elimination. This is creating career path and a journey for my people. Anybody else? Dwayne?
Yeah, I will tell you, when I first started in cyber, I'm chuckling a little bit about Marcos talking about a few things, because I remember having to ratchet a T3 onto a Sun 4800, if anybody out there knows what that is.
Yeah.
And because my LLM was like, it was physical, right? And I always tell people cyber kind of paved the way, because we wanted all the data we could get. We just couldn't pay to store it all, right? Mm-hmm. So, but to your point, thinking about all of that, I embraced it pretty well, but I was hesitant. I would tell people, embrace and learn. Don't be afraid. Ask the questions.
I love that.
My story is, I worked with a whole lot of people that are way smarter than I was. And the difference was, they thought it was easy. It was difficult for me, and I was shy about it. I wish I'd embraced harder. And don't be afraid of looking stupid. Just don't do anything stupid. Learn.
Got it. Marcos, wrap it up for us here, my friend.
Yeah, let's wrap it up. So don't automate just for the sake of automating. Clean up your processes first. And we learned that the hard way. Don't take X process with 13 steps and automate the 13 steps. Because automating the 13 steps is, in a broken process, is not going to yield the outcome that you want. Clean up your processes first, streamline them, then you proceed to automate. It's going to save a lot of headaches down the road.
Awesome. All right. I am going to thank you both for agreeing to join me here and for all the discussion. I know that our audience is going to find this very valuable, and hopefully they're asking questions as they're going here and listening to this. And I'm looking forward to doing maybe a follow-on here, because I think there's a whole nother topic that we've probably lost time. And I'm going to hand this back to Tom to take us to our next, to fully wrap us up.
Right. Great job. Honestly, that was a wonderful conversation to just kind of kick back and listen to. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I'm not even a SOC security person. So well done, honestly, all three of you. I want to point out one thing that I'm surprised you didn't mention this, Patty. You used to be a client before April when you came on board, if I'm not mistaken. You actually saw the proof of the pudding and were like, you know what? I'm going to go work there on top of it all. So I think that speaks volumes about what's happening over at your organization. So if you want to comment on that, you can. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and wrap us up.
Yeah, I have to say I was a customer before. 6 years ago, we adopted the technology, and we had just shifted off of our secure email gateway, and the volume of tickets that were coming in was crushing my analysts, and I only had a handful. And it's just when we turned on the tech, that whole automation piece gave my people a whole different lifestyle after that. So yes, you're right, Tom, customer before I became an employee, but it took me about 6 years to figure out I needed to go do something slightly different. But yeah, love the tech, love the company, and love my fellow presenters here.
You guys definitely have some great camaraderie for sure. So I love that part. Thank you all. I'm going to wrap us up now. We've got stuff in the resources for you guys to enjoy. So download that stuff if you haven't already. There is an email risk assessment you're going to want to check out. There's a link in there for that. This will actually give you a really super cool report. It takes just minutes to install this thing. It checks things out, pretty non-invasive, honestly, and it kicks out a nice report for you. It's a no obligation type thing. So I would fully take advantage of that if you can. So that's a link in the resources. So check that stuff out. We also have our next webcast coming up on the 22nd. This is chapter 15. Again, like I said at the beginning, I'll automatically roll you into this. But if you know folks that are struggling, share the information with them. We're going to be talking about supercharged deception, how AI is accelerating social engineering. So today we talked about how we can kind of make things good, kind of helping out our SOC folks, getting them more productive, not doing lame customer servicey kind of stuff, and actually really enjoying their job and getting behind the stuff. Next time, we're going to be talking about the social engineering aspect, what the bad guys are doing to trick our people. So we're going to try to get our hands around that stuff. So check out the resource tab. Check out those different things that we have there. I've got other things loaded in there as well as chapter 13, the one that you might have missed from a couple weeks back. So check that stuff out. Otherwise, that concludes our time together. I do want to mention real quick, you can get your CPE credit certificate in that resource tab right now. So click on that. It is a pop-up, so you might have some challenges if you've got yourself really locked down. If you have any problems, just email me, tomb@secureworld.io, and I'll help you out. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day and share this information with anyone that you feel is struggling with their SOC and getting it automated. So, all right, everybody, thank you. Thank you to our friends over at Abnormal AI for making the Convergence series possible. Join us on the 22nd as we wrap up season 5 with chapter 15. Be well, everybody.